Like novels, fictional films or series have a frame plot, which in most cases forms the core of that work. They encourage the viewer to want to continue following it. This is also the case in the anime series discussed in this essay, Shinsekai Evangelion, or Neon Genesis Evangelion. However, it differs significantly from other series, especially within its own genre, the robot sci-fi anime. Its focus changes from event-orientated to almost exclusively psychological or philosophical in nature, and especially the characters and their mental problems come into focus. This even leads to the fact that the last 2 episodes are set entirely in the psyche of the main character, and the plot ends without a resolution of the basic story. Since such an unconventional approach to the structure has simultaneously astonished and excited me, and Neon Genesis Evangelion, despite its uniqueness, still being seen as a classic of Japanese anime as a whole, it is my aim in this essay to present the change in focus of the plot. I will show how and then why Hideaki Anno changed the structure of the story from a conventional action and story-orientated beginning to an ending that focuses on characters and their psyche. Neon Genesis Evangelion is a 26-episode science fiction mecha series set in a post-apocalyptic world. It is about a 14-year-old boy, Shinji Ikari, who is summoned to Neo-Tokyo free by his father after he was abandoned by him in early childhood due to the death of his mother. On his arrival, Shinji meets one of the angels, which are giant alien creatures whose goal is to destroy humanity. As a result, he is supposed to go into battle against the attackers by means of a biomechanical fighting machine, the name-giving Evangelion. As Susan Napier describes it, this basic structure with a world savior role is quite conventional for anime series, especially of the mecha genre. After the introductory episodes, Evangelion even has a Monster of the Week structure. It works in a way that a new enemy appears per episode, presenting the characters with new challenges that are solved within the same episode. It is often the case that these battles have little influence on the course of the frame story, which is why the story progresses only slowly or even not at all. Though, this structure seems to change drastically from the halfway point of the series. Its atmosphere becomes noticeably darker, and the plot delves much more into the children's traumatizing past. However, hints of a deeper nature of the series can already be found from episode 1. For example, we learn quite early on how Shinji distances himself from his fellow human beings and, despite the fact that he takes up the fight against the angels, suffers traumas from the brutal confrontations and even denies them by expressing unwillingness and fear. But how does Hideaki Anno manage to shift the transition from conventional narrative in combination with fight scenes to a focus on psychology and philosophy without creating an unnatural break? First and foremost, there is an aspect within the series that gives the aforementioned change of focus a narrative meaning. In episode 16, an angel appears for the first time who does not pursue the strategy of physically attacking the Eva pilots. He relies on penetrating the psyche and thus incapacitating his opponent. This creates a logical justification for moving the scene into the psyche of the child. However, on the cinematic side, techniques are also used specifically and effectively to draw the viewer's focus to the inner world of the characters. By inserting still images, complete silence, voice-over dialogue, and above all, stopping the visually breathtaking action, it is ensured that the viewer's attention is directed away from the impressive images of the fights towards the psychological problems. The very unique last 2 episodes deserve a special mention. These are set entirely in Shinji's mind, and thus have in essence no physical and tangible environment to depict the scenery. It is not only unusual that an action series ends without a climactic battle, but the images used, such as Shinji sitting alone in a dimly lit empty room, serve as an illustration to the viewer that one is currently in the character's psyche. The use of storyboard drawings and sketchy animations kept in black and white also makes it clear that the scene does not take place in a real location within the series, but represents what Shinji feels inside. The following quote sums up the impact of this method. By making this inner life visible, the spectator is given the opportunity to actively participate in the character's experience.
And then my mother was hanging from the ceiling. She looked so happy. But I hated how she looked. I don't want to die. I don't want to disappear. I hate this. I hate boys. I hate my father and my mother. I hate everyone! Nobody cares about me! Nobody stays with me! So I don't want to depend on anybody! But I hate it at the same time! It's a pain! I don't want to be alone! I don't want to be alone! I don't want to be alone!
Don't leave me. Don't ignore me.
Don't kill me!
One reason for how and why the change in focus in the structure of Neon Genesis Evangelion could take place is the conception of the episodes. They were developed over the course of the series, thanks to the structure of most Japanese television production. This meant that the storyboards could be changed at any time up to the first broadcast. Since Evangelion, in contrast to most other anime, is not based on a manga template, there was also more freedom to change the content of the series. Anno quotes in a 1996 interview, "I worked on Evangelion as a live performance. As I worked, I took in various opinions and analyzed my own psychology. And I thought, oh, this is how it should be. And I found these words afterwards." This was essentially the prerequisite for the plot and atmosphere to be subjected to such a drastic turnaround in the middle of the series. Why Anno and Studio Gainax made this change during production, however, has its own reasons. To frame these, I will first go into the preceding conditions of Neon Genesis Evangelion's creation. The historically formative atomic bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in the Second World War is considered the inspiration for a large number of Japanese post-apocalyptic film productions. Its lasting traumatizing influence on Japan's national culture manifests itself to this day in films such as Akira or Evangelion in their post-disaster setting, in which society is largely wiped out by a major event. In addition to this social influence, however, it is above all the personal reasons of producer and creator Hideaki Anno that give rise to the dark, unconventional and psychologically profound structure of the series. After working on Fushigi no Umi no Nadia, or Nadia the Secret of Blue Water, Anno entered a creative and existential crisis, as he was unable to mentally separate himself from his work for a long time. He also dealt with psychological illness for the first time during production and incorporated his own mental problems into the series in the form of the characters. However, it was first and foremost the criticism and the insights that Anno wanted to communicate to the viewers with the peculiarities of his series. At time of the first broadcast of Neon Genesis, robot anime were stuck in their pattern, which is why this pattern was supposed to be broken. At the same time, Anno questioned the value of happiness that fans of robot anime find in just that. Experiencing such a fictional heroic story is nothing other than a way of retreating into one's own fantasy. The various characters in Evangelion do exactly this. They engage in escapism. They use this escapism to deal with their personal traumas. Shinji seeks validation from other people to escape his own lack of self-esteem. However, Neon Genesis Evangelion does not justify this at all, but encourages people to face reality. For such mechanisms are only one form of committing self-hatred. By means of this profound emotional and psychological analysis of the characters, the series generally pursues the goal of enabling the viewer to achieve the narcissistic identification. As Badariki and Brinkhoff explain, the screen functions as a mirror in which one can compare one's own mind with the audiovisually represented psyche of these characters.
But I don't understand myself. Where am I? What am I?
What am I?
Nobody understands me!
What are you, stupid? Of course nobody understands you. Nobody can ever understand you.
The only one who can take care of you and understand you is you, yourself. So you must take care of yourself.
But I still don't understand myself! I don't even know what it is that makes me myself! How can I love myself?
The climax of the criticism of escapism is found in the final two episodes, 25 and 26, which end the series as I described, without concluding the frame story and without an action-packed climax. It is wishful thinking that others, no matter how close they are to you, could understand or even completely solve your own path. To illustrate this point, Anno and his team have ended the series in such an unexpected way. As a viewer, one is forced to confront one's own flaws and possible psychological problems, instead of simply witnessing the end of another series. Neon Genesis Evangelion aims to show that true happiness can only be achieved through your own self, by consciously trying to change one's perspective on the many aspects of the world and oneself. With this attitude, Anno tries to not only criticize the viewer, but also to give advice on how to solve own mental problem. You have to be able to convince yourself of your own worth. Only then can you overcome deep-seated trauma, by moving from a focus on battles between Evangelion and Angel to confrontations with the inner self. Anno ultimately wants to illustrate that conflicts with one's own spirit are often far more essential to one's happiness than conflict with the external world.
If you take that into consideration, then perhaps this world isn't that bad.
Still, the reality itself might not be bad, but I could still hate myself.
But it's your mind which takes reality and separates it into what's bad and hateful.
It is only the mind which separates reality from truth.
Any new position from which you view your reality will change your perception of its nature. It's all literally a matter of perspective.
There are as many truths as there are people.
But there's only one truth that is your truth. That's the one that's formed from whatever point of view that you choose to view it from. It's a revised perception that protects you.
That's true, and one can have a perspective that's far too small.
However, a person can only see things from the perspective that they choose to see them from.
One must learn to judge things via the perceived truths that one receives from others.
For example, sunny days make you feel good.
Rainy days make you feel gloomy.
If you are told this is so, then that is what you believe is so.
But you can have fun on a rainy day as well.
Your truth can be changed simply by the way you accept it. That's how fragile the truth for a human is.
A person's truth is so simple that most ignore it to concentrate on what they think are deeper truths.
You, for example, are simply unused to what it is to be liked by others.
You've never learned how to deal with fearing what others feel about you, and so you avoid it.
But don't the others hate me?
What are you, stupid? Haven't you realized it's all in your imagination, you mega dork?
But I hate myself.
One who truly hates himself cannot love. He cannot place his trust in another.
I'm a coward. I'm cowardly, sneaky, and weak.
No. Only if you think you are, but if you know yourself, you can take care of yourself.
I hate myself. But maybe I could love myself. Maybe my life could have a greater value. That's right. I am no more or less than myself. I am me. I want to be myself. I want to continue existing in this world. My life is worth living here.
In summary, the transition from an event-oriented to a psychology-focused storyline in Neon Genesis Evangelion was achieved through a variety of cinematic means, the introduction of mentally orientated antagonists, and the Japanese production structure. The reason for the change in focus is Hideaki Anno's own mental conflicts, which he wanted to represent in his own work, the criticism of the mecha anime genre, and finally the insights he wanted the viewers to gain. These insights, as an important reason for the conception of Neon Genesis Evangelion, have been a formative experience for me, along with some other aspects of the series, of course. It has significantly influenced my view of the world, the behavior of my fellow human beings, and the question of personal happiness. But it is not only me that Evangelion brings new questions and perspectives that influence the thinking too, every time it is rewatched. Deju writes in her work that the series opened her eyes. Through Neon Genesis, she learned how far her personality was actually just a fabrication. As an epilogue, I would like to briefly discuss the reception of the series when it was first released. Despite the fact that the psychology-focused story caused enthusiasm from episode 16 onwards, the unconventional ending was received with disappointment and anger by the broad audience when it was first broadcasted. The lack of a fight as a climax and the simple visual structure of the final 2 episodes even prompted angry fans to write threatening letters to the studio. However, the reception changed over time to an almost entirely positive outcome. Evangelion as a franchise is not only one of Japan's biggest in the anime industry, with its own store in Tokyo, countless adaptations and spin-off manga and film sequels, as well as its own Shinkansen train line. The original, along with Cowboy Bebop, or in Western hemispheres known as Cowboy Bebop, is the only anime on one of the biggest film review sites, Rotten Tomatoes, with a 100% critics review rating. However, whether you immediately understand the complex story and can comprehend the values that the series wants to convey and apply them in your life depends on the viewer. If you are already at peace with yourself and the world at time of the viewing, or you are not able to stand the framework story of robots fighting in a post-apocalypse at all, are decisive factors in determining the value you can derive from the series. No matter the fact, in my personal life, it has been an important work.